Technical perfection on an A2 48 horsepower bike. The tune-up for the Suzuki GSX-8S, all in this video. Right then, Martin, we haven't had many 48 horsepower bikes in the Racelab, but I think it's a great opportunity to show what technical perfection can offer beginners, younger riders who might not be aiming for the big leagues of racing, but just want a proper bike and a good time. So I think it's only fair to begin by saying a few kind words about this engine, because you once told me, I think it was also here in the Racelab, that the best motorcycle engine is a V4. But now we're sitting in front of something that's often seen as the bread and butter engine, the budget-friendly solution for those who can't afford a V4 or whatever else. But what we've got here is a bike that's meant to be fun on the road. You've had it on the dyno, you've ridden it, you've had a proper look at it. What's your overall impression of this so-called bread and butter engine?
It is, like you said, a bread and butter engine, and with good reason, because with a bike like this, it's not about outright performance. It's about being a good all-rounder, reliable in all situations, long-lasting, with low vibrations and a smooth running feel. And for that, this engine that Suzuki developed not too long ago is really well suited, especially for this kind of bike, as it's a parallel twin with a 270-degree crank offset. That gives it a lot of character. It feels similar to a V-twin, but it's even more compact. For an engine just shy of 800 cubic centimeters, it's relatively narrow because it only has 2 cylinders to spread the displacement across, and overall it's still very compact. A V engine can be narrow too, but it needs space for a rear cylinder which eats into the design. But here you've got space behind the 2-cylinder block. You can see it clearly if you look at the bike side on, and you can use that space for all kinds of tech. That lets you build a compact bike around it. It's always the same story. You start with the engine and build the motorcycle around it. And when the engine's already compact, like this one is, the whole bike can be compact. It ends up narrow, and that makes handling easier too, because the crankshaft isn't wide. The crankshaft is kind of like a tightrope walker's balance pole. The wider it is, the more it stabilizes, but that also makes it less agile. So from a design point of view, this engine fits the bike very well.
That's the overall advantage of the engine design, but I think Suzuki really nailed 3 particular areas. One of them, which you already touched on, is the vibration issue you often get with parallel twins that have crank offset. And even a beginner can feel those vibrations, and if the bike rattles when you pull away, it's just not pleasant. But Suzuki have really sorted that here. How did they manage it?
They've used 2 balance shafts to reduce vibrations. They've spent a lot of time fine-tuning it to smooth out vibrations of all kinds. And you can feel it. For a 2-cylinder engine with this much displacement, you can already go full throttle at quite low revs without it lurching or shaking the chain. It runs very smoothly. Even at high revs, where vibrations usually kick in, there's hardly anything noticeable. They've really put effort and clever engineering into making it smooth, and it works very well. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing this engine in other bikes soon.
Another thing they've done really well, which might be due to the engine's long stroke design, which I'm sure you'll touch on, is the throttle response. It's amazing. It has an advantage over 4-cylinder engines there. A lot of bikes struggle when switching from engine braking into load under current emissions rules, but not this one. How would you explain that to viewers? Why is the throttle response so silky, even at low revs?
Engines designed for torque, like this one with a relatively long stroke compared to the bore, are naturally smoother in partial load situations. That makes things easier for the engineers doing the electronics, because you're not dealing with extreme cam timing. That makes it much simpler to get smooth transitions between off throttle and on throttle. Especially with modern emission standards, manufacturers have to run very lean mixtures at partial throttle to get approval. That can easily cause rough throttle transitions or surging in tricky engines. But this engine's layout doesn't really show those problems, not because they're eliminated completely, but because they just don't show up the way they do in other engines. And that helps with the electronics too. You don't need endless adjustments to make it ride smoothly.
Yeah, it's great. This is actually my son's bike. We looked at a few others, but he kept running into the same issue. When he rolled into a corner with the throttle closed and then started to roll it back on, there'd be a delay. And even as a beginner, that really annoyed him. Same thing bothers me on track. You lose confidence. So this smooth throttle response was really important to him. And he also loved the blue wheels. That's what helped him decide. But what I could really sell him on, and we've got it in black and white, was the torque and power delivery. That's the big highlight of this engine. Suzuki have really done something special here, even in the 48 horsepower version. Martin, I don't think you've seen a power curve like this very often on a 48 horsepower engine, right?
That's right. Because the engine is already designed for torque, the 48 horsepower version benefits from that. If the restriction is done properly, and Suzuki really have done it well, you can just flatten the power curve right at 48 horsepower. So from the bottom up to 48 horsepower, you're not losing anything in terms of response or feel. Up to 5,000 revs, it's exactly the same as the full power version. The difference only starts above 5,000, where the curve level's off. And if you look at it on the graph, you'll see it stays at 48 horsepower all the way to the limiter. That's the ideal case. The only way to get more would be to have the curve shoot straight up vertically at the start, which obviously isn't possible. So what you get instead is a very strong and flat torque delivery across the whole range. You don't really feel a drop-off, it's just that above that point, you don't get that extra rev-happy sensation you'd get with a fully unrestricted engine. But if you're limited to 48 horsepower, this is one of the best ways to do it because you get that full output consistently from 5,000 RPM onwards. And that makes it a very strong option for beginners. It feels like a proper motorcycle, but still keeps to the 48 horsepower limit.
My son's also fairly tall, 1.80 meters. And even as a kid, he was already tall. That creates issues with a lot of smaller A2 bikes. They can feel like toys, especially the seating position. Maybe fine for someone smaller and lighter, but not for him. And this bike, with its 180 rear tire, is a full-size naked bike. It has all the strengths and weaknesses of that format, but if what you want is solid performance in the 48 horsepower class, then it's a fantastic choice. For me, it was the best option, which is why I picked it for my son. And then there's the ergonomics. You wrote it yourself. I reckon that's a big reason why naked bikes are so popular. They give you that I'm in control feeling better than most other bike types. Would you agree? They don't have the vague feeling of a big enduro with all that suspension travel, and they're not hunched over like a super sport. Is that the real secret of the naked bike?
Definitely. You get a really relaxed seating position, which is key for street riding. It means you can ride for longer without sore wrists or general discomfort. But at the same time, the position is still sporty enough to give good feedback. The weight balance is decent too. You're not too far over the front, which you don't really need with this level of performance. Of course, some high-end naked bikes push over 200 horsepower, and those do need a more forward bias to keep the front end planted. But on bikes like this, you don't. And with the wide bars, it's easy to handle, especially when turning around in tight spaces. That's a big thing too. It's not just about riding, but how manageable the bike is in day-to-day situations. Naked bikes are great for that, whether you're experienced or just starting out. The levers are light, the clutch is easy. It all comes together to give a fun, stress-free riding experience. From a suspension and geometry point of view, they're not far off from super sports either. Fork angle, trail, all of that is often very similar. So the stability is really good, which is important for confidence. You want a stable platform so you know what's going on underneath you. That's something that big enduros often lack. They can feel vague, especially with long travel suspension. On the road, if you brake hard, they dive a lot. You don't get that on a naked. So yeah, I think a naked bike is a brilliant base concept. Sporty, but still comfortable and road focused.
Right, and then we added a few extras, a bit of sparkle. The young lads still care about looks, unlike us old pragmatists. We've fitted a few Puch bolt-ons. And to be fair, they're not just cosmetic, they do have a practical use too. Actually, if we're talking best bang for your buck, it's probably the axle protectors. They're not just for show, Martin. They really make a difference. From your experience in the workshop, those axle protectors are small bits with a big impact, right?
Absolutely. They are placed right where the bike tends to hit the ground in a crash, usually at the rear swing arm or the bottom of the fork legs. And they really do protect those areas. They don't cost much. And if the bike ever tips over, they can save you a fair bit of repair cost. And I don't think they look bad either. These days, they're nicely designed and blend in well. So they're a great little upgrade that offers real protection in case things go wrong.
We don't have a wind tunnel, and we're not sensitive enough to say whether the aero add-ons actually help at 150 kilometers per hour, but they definitely look cool. What's not just about looks, though, are the foot pegs. Aftermarket footrests like these have one big advantage and a bit of a drawback. They give you more grip. Martin, walk us through it. What's the benefit and what's the downside of adding these grippy serrated pegs?
The downside is definitely that comfort can suffer a little, but it really depends on the engine. If it's already smooth, it's not such a big issue. Often it's not a problem at all. You barely get any vibration in the footrests. A lot of stock pegs have rubber tops to reduce vibration, especially since the mounting arms can amplify it. The rubber helps dampen that. But on this bike, it's not really necessary. So you can benefit from the upside, better feel and grip on the pegs. If you're just cruising to get ice cream on a Sunday, it doesn't make much difference. But if you want to ride actively and use the pegs to steer the bike a bit, then better grip is a big advantage. You're less likely to slip off and it just gives you more control. So it's a solid upgrade if you're riding a bit more dynamically.
Top class. He'll also be using it at the 1000 PS Bridgestone track days to work on his cornering. We're not talking about chasing lap times, just riding in a proper training center. And when he leans in a bit harder, I like knowing he's got more grip on the pegs. But let's get to the heart of this tune-up. I should mention, there's also a full racing system available for the GSX-8S and GSX-8R. My son would have loved that, obviously. But I think our neighbor might have had something to say about it. So we went for the fully legal version from Akrapovič instead. And it's not just about the sound. This system brings real benefits. Still 100% street legal, not too loud, classy sound. Neighbor's happy, son's happy, everything's spot on. But make no mistake, it actually makes a difference. This part is insane. Akrapovič really managed to pull off measurable improvements within the legal limits, right?
Absolutely. For one, it's noticeably lighter. We saved 2.5 kilos. Now you could debate whether that's a lot or not.
That's 33%. Your wife worked that out, didn't she?
Exactly. The stock system weighed 7.9 kilos, basically 8. The Akrapovič came in at 5.3. We actually weighed it. And considering it includes everything needed to stay legal on the road, that's a solid weight saving. These days, manufacturers put loads of effort into their exhausts, not just to meet emissions rules, but also for sound and power. Compared to back in the day, it's a different game. Before, you just slap on a pipe and stuff something in the muffler to keep it quiet, done. That made it easy to gain power with an aftermarket pipe. Today, it's much harder, especially if you want to stay road legal, because OEMs are already squeezing everything out of their systems. So just matching the stock performance is already a win. But Akrapovič have gone beyond that.
Exactly. And we saw it on the dyno from 0 to 5,000 RPM. The power is pretty much the same. But then where the restriction hits, that 48 horsepower limit, you can see the curves start to separate. Across a 4,000 RPM range, you're getting about 2 more horsepower. That's impressive. It's a small bump, but still under the A2 cap. So it's still road legal, still type approved. That's exactly what you want. Nothing for your neighbor to moan about and nothing for the authorities to complain about if they check it. And the thing is, if you just look at the figures on paper, 2 horsepower doesn't sound like much. But the dyno graph shows you the real story. It's about the area under the curve, and getting that extra 2 horsepower across 4,000 RPM adds up to a big slice of usable power. That's something you'd probably notice under acceleration. But in the end, it's about how it looks, how it sounds, and for me, the weight saving is a big win. If it's lighter and still works just as well, then they've clearly used better materials or tech, or both. Because how else do you lose that weight? As an engineer, I'm thinking there's some serious high-end kit inside. All right, Martin, I think we've gone on long enough again. Hope we've managed to give you all some insight into how technical choices affect real-world riding, even for beginner-level bikes in the 48 horsepower class, and what little tuning tweaks can actually do. Thanks for watching. Take care, folks. Ciao, ciao.